available at the Montana State Library. I think that we're really lucky in Montana that we have a lot of resources available. Other states aren't as lucky, we don't have these statewide data sets available. So you may or may not know that. You may have tried to reach out to other states to find similar geographic statewide data layers. And one major example would be the cadastral. It's pretty unique in that we are able to have a statewide cadastral that's updated at least monthly, and that's something I can go into later. When we
can you just say what the cadastral is?
Yeah, sure. The cadastral is basically it's a Montana spatial data infrastructure layer, and we'll get into that. And it is public and private land ownership. And it also, when I refer to the cadastral, I could be referring to several things, but it's usually the web application. So it's gis.mt.gov. And with this website, you're able to research public and private land ownership information. And also you can research the digital representation of the public land survey system. So that would be section, townships, and ranges and such. And so we're lucky in that Montana has a statewide application. Like I said, it is updated monthly, and I'll touch on that a little later. So let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, here we go. Murphy's Law is present and operating while we are working remotely. So I'll do the best I can, and forgive me if I fumble a little and have to switch screens to show you actual demos of some of our resources in the data and applications that we have available. So this is the very basics of what a GIS is. So a lot of people just think of it maybe as something on a computer, but for those of us who are GIS professionals, it's really made up of 5 different components. So those professionals would be myself, analysts, techs, programmers, data folks, and then the information or the data that we publish. Examples would be statewide parcel layer, statewide hydro layer, statewide county boundaries. That's some of the information that we publish. The hardware is pretty straightforward. That could be the GPS units we're working on, any kind of computer, any kind of information collecting data, plotters and such. The software is, well, there's many different types of software, but the one that the state uses is the Esri ArcGIS desktop, ArcGIS Pro licenses. Those are some of the licenses terminology you may or may not have heard of. I'm going to get into this a little later, but the reason why I'm showing you all this is because, you know, we kind of touch on all of these different things when it comes to the resources that we have available. So software, we do have an enterprise license agreement with Esri, which is the software company. And I will talk about that because I've been informed that everyone on the call or this training are state employees. So I just want to let you know what's available to state employees. And then the methods are the methods that we use, the standards and best practices to create the data. You might not be too familiar with some methods to create GIS data, but you definitely rely upon those to make sure that we're doing it accurately and maintain the information over time. So these are the 5 components of a GIS. This basically, the Montana Land Information Act is an act that was put into place around 2005, and it's basically the foundation of how one of the pieces of foundation, or one of the parts of the foundation that we use to build GIS off of in the state. So we have the NRIS, which you might be familiar with as well, the Natural Resource Information System, and then the Montana Land Information Act. So the Land Information Act establishes the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure. And the reason why I'm going into the act is because out of this are resources that are available to state employees and the public. So I just wanted to touch on this briefly. So part of the Land Information Act creates a grant program that I'm going to go into, but all state employees are eligible, or state agencies are eligible for a grant program, specifically meant to build geographic resources. So if there's something that you're interested in that hasn't been created yet, or you'd like to contribute to existing information, there is a grant program that you could use to help get that done. So one of the purpose of the Montana Land Information Act is to ensure that the information is collected consistently, maintained accurately in accordance with standards, and then made publicly available. And so, like I said, this is kind of under the hood, but you definitely, these are the things you want. You might not want to worry about. That's our job at the state library and other GIS professionals. But you will run into data that isn't consistently collected, and so that can really lead to a lot of problems in the future if you're trying to do some sort of long-term assessment of information, anything over time. And so another thing is maintaining the information accurately. You want to be able to rely upon the information that we produce. So the Land Information Act basically ensures that this is done, and then of course made publicly available. We are a library, and we feel very strongly about making our information publicly available. And I think we're pretty transparent in the information that we have made available over the years. And you can find it on some of the resources that I will be showing you soon. And the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure is essentially our framework for the necessary land information needed to meet the needs, the business needs of the state of Montana and its citizens. And I'll go into that in future slides. Then it also creates a Land Information Advisory Council. So the council meets at least 4 times a year, and they discuss issues and policies on geographic information. Invite you to come to a council meeting. The next one will be sometime at the end of April. We had to reschedule, but if you're interested in learning more, please contact me. And then, like I said before, we have a grant program. It's an annual grant program, and we'll get into a little bit about that later. And the annual land information plan basically sets our priorities for every year when it comes to collecting spatial data for Montana. So the MLIA grant program is an annual grant program that follows the state fiscal year. It's released, it's in code, that it needs to be released no later than January 15th, and applications must be submitted by February 15th. So every year we open up applications for 30 days, and these applications, the priorities set forth in the land plan, basically define the eligibility of what a person could apply for, or an agency could apply for collecting spatial information. Applicants must represent a form of government. So most of you are state, if not all of you are state government representatives, so you would be eligible to submit a grant. We normally make about $250,000 available every year for grant funds, and it really fluctuates on the amount of money we have coming into our land information account. So I want to dive a little deeper into the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure. So like I said, this is our framework. This is the 15 defined spatial data layers that we, as a state, as a GIS community, have set forth to be the most important layers that need to be collected and maintained regularly, consistently over time. So these have been identified and approved by the Montana Land Information Advisory Council, and every framework layer has a theme steward. So that's the agency that's responsible for promoting the framework, possibly collecting the information, creating data models and best practices, creating products to serve the information out, whether it's a downloadable data set, a web mapping service, some sort of application to serve the information out, or other types of data products. And there also are a lot of active working groups out there depending upon the theme. One active working group right now, it's very active, is the elevation working group. The elevation theme steward is the Montana State Library, and the theme lead, which is the person who takes the lead on all efforts related to that layer, is Troy Blanford, and he is actively seeking to get statewide LiDAR, so a statewide LiDAR layer to improve the elevation theme. If you're interested in that, please reach out to me or Troy Blanford, and we can invite you to the working group and have you start participating. Excuse me. So basically, the way we collect information is usually based on a federated approach, where we look for the information available at the local level before we federate it to the state level, and then push that off to the feds for integration into the necessary national layers. We also work with tribes a lot as well if it's available at the tribal level as well. So we always try to harvest the information from locals because they usually have the best idea of what's happening on the ground. And then, like I said, we take that and federate into statewide data sets and then serve it out to the national data layers. So here are the current 15 Montana spatial data infrastructure framework layers. So first one is administrative boundaries. Well, let me take a step back. The star indicates, or the asterisk indicates, a national spatial data infrastructure layer. So those basically represent a layer that's also made available at the national level. We have, I think, an extra 7 that we've deemed important and we would like to put our efforts into, and that creates the Montana spatial data infrastructure. But the federal level, there are, I think there are 8 right now, actually. So we have administrative boundaries, cadastral, climate, elevation, geographic names, geology, hydrography, hydrologic units, land cover, mapping control, imagery, soils, structures and addresses, transportations, and wetlands and riparian. So basically, based on the best practices that we have available, and through the Montana Land Information Act, we make a statewide data layer available for every one of these 15 layers. Some have a lot of sub-layers. We call it administrative boundaries framework. It's kind of like an umbrella, but we call it an administrative boundary layer. But as you can imagine, there's many different pieces of geographic information that would exist under the administrative boundary layer. And so I will go ahead and pull that up right now. We'll see if this works. Okay. Okay, a quick switch out. Hopefully you can still see.
Yep, we got it.
Thank you. So all 15 layers have a corresponding web page, which has a lot of really great information about each and every layer and its components. So I wanted to show you the administrative boundary layer, and I can show you how to get to the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure, the higher overarching page here in a second. But with this boundary layer, it's going to give, you know, definitions of all the information that we have available for the framework. And then this one actually has a nice list published here, so you can see all the information that's being collected and classified under the administrative boundaries. So it's pretty straightforward what you would expect to see under administrative boundaries. So you can see in this table, there was a date of last published. So we publish and work on these annually. So I know that they're in the process of updating the layers and taking a snapshot of their annual updates. Some layers are updated on a more frequent basis. It really depends on the layer itself. But know that the information is up there and is constantly being updated and collected. So this is a page of the Montana State Library, and so if I go to the home page and I go to Digital Library on the left-hand side, and then I click on Geographic Information Clearinghouse underneath that, and then Data. You can see that there is an entry for the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure under that menu. And if I click on that, it's the overarching web page for all 15 layers. And you can see each defined steward. So the Montana State Library does steward most of these layers, and then their corresponding technical leads.
Erin,
Yeah.
a quick interruption. We had a question. Is the MSDI now available on a secure site?
I guess you need to define secure site.
They were saying the web link is HTTP, not HTTPS.
Oh, I think we're in the process of updating that. Right now it is HTTP, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let me double check. Yeah, I think we are in the process of making that HTTPS compliant, but as you can see, it is, or as someone did point out, it isn't quite yet. Is that preventing folks from getting access to the information?
No, I think it was just a question.
Okay, okay. Good to know. I'm going to make a note. Okay. So, let's see where I am on my slides. Okay. Go back to that. All right, so if I pause my share my slideshow again. Are you seeing the slides?
This is a forgiving crowd, so don't worry.
Is it the slides now?
We're still seeing the web page.
Okay, hold on. Look, it seems as if here. Okay, how about that?
Yes.
Okay, great. We're all learning the new technology.
Indeed.
Okay, so I wanted to point out several of our resources that we have, and I listed these for finding information that you might use in your analysis. And so the first one is the GIS data list. And this data list is a representation of information that GIS professionals in the state want to have published. And this is not just data that's from the Montana State Library. It is open for anyone and everyone to publish to. So consider it like a true library, kind of like your card catalog for finding all available spatial data. Now the spatial data could be published and it just has never been registered with the data list, but we do consider it a best practice to register all geographic information with the data list. So I will go ahead and show you that now. I think it's the pause. I have to do a stop and kind of restart every time. All right. And does everyone see the data list, or anyone?
Yes, we have
okay,
it.
Fantastic.
Search. So
similarly to where we found the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure webpage, you can see the two above it in the left-hand menu is the data list. I do a lot of Googling and just search for Montana GIS data list, and it always usually comes up for me. So that's another quick way to find it. But I will post these, the links with the materials, and you'll have access to those direct links. So I will, so we have a lot of different ways to search for the information, but there's a basic search where it searches what's called a metadata record. And the metadata record is basically, it's your information about the data. So it's your data about your data. And within that, it'll tell you what type of geographic data it is, when it was created, how it was created, who created it, who to contact if you have questions like that. So the metadata is very important, because if you're going to use information, you want to know where that was collected, how it was collected, and have that really good information to kind of back up some of the analysis you might be doing. And you also want to know if it's coming from some sort of authoritative source. So I will type in
Hey, Erin, real quick. Trevor,
Yeah.
can you see what Erin is sharing? I'm just seeing a message that says Erin is started screen sharing.
I have her screen, yeah.
Okay, it's me then. I'll sort that out. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So in the text search, I'm just gonna click on I'm gonna type in cadastral and do a basic text search. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and click on that. And what that does is it's going to search the data list of all the metadata records that have been entered in there. So if you're interested in finding cadastral data, it will search all the information that we have available and then return a list, thankfully. And it's returning 32 records. And so some of this information might not make sense of, you know, why the city, number 25, the city of Red Lodge, comes up when we search for cadastral. Well, basically, it's doing just a full text search of that metadata record. And I can just go ahead and click on the city of Red Lodge zoning. And this is what each record will look like. So we've taken the full record, which is kind of, it's not very easy and pretty to view. It's usually in an XML format, and we've pulled out information that we think is important. And so then we have it available in these tabs here. So the description tab gives you a basic description about the information. How it should be utilized is the usage tab. How it's distributed is the distribution tab. So who created the information and any kind of liability statements. And then you can click on metadata and get the full on metadata record. And like I said, that's XML. I'm not sure. Let's see if it'll, yeah, okay. So here is it's basically a web wrapper.
I've got more people saying that they can't see your screen.
Okay.
So could you just stop sharing and restart maybe?
Yeah.
Trevor, what were you going to say?
It looks like either your screen share is paused or we're having some trouble. So I would either see if you can unpause, and if that's not an option, restart it here.
All right, hold on just 1 second. I have a lot of pages open up, so I'm just gonna go ahead and shut them all. All right. Let's try that again. So I'm going to stop sharing because I did do the unpause and repause to try to do that. So let's try this again. Okay.
So I'm still getting the black screen without what you're displaying. Double click to enter full screen mode.
Okay, let me try it one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Does that work?
Now we see something. I see something anyway. Trevor?
Yep, it looks like it's working anyway.
Okay, so I wonder if it's clicking between the tabs is doing it. So I'm just going to do a real quick test.
Sure.
Can you see me click between the tabs?
I can see you click between the tabs, and what I'm seeing is that your web browser appears a little minimized. It's not doing the full screen option on top of the error page that I was seeing.
Really?
But right now, I mean, I think this is pretty functional.
Okay.
And our gallery of folks, the Brady Bunch, would you click your reactions at the bottom? Give us a thumbs up. We're getting some thumbs up, so people are seeing what you're saying.
Okay, great.
All right.
Okay. So I can take a step back and so everyone can see. I don't want to. So here's the data list, and like I said, I'll send those links straight forward. So what I'm going to do, or with the materials, excuse me. So what I'm going to do is type in cadastral into the text search, click search at the bottom. That's all I want to search on right now. And I'm going to get this list of 32 results. So these are current records. And then it also goes back to historic records. These are data sources that have been deemed historic in nature. And so if you're looking for historic data, that's just another tab that you're going to need to click on. But I want current records and I want to see current information. So I was down here on City of Red Lodge zoning, and I'm going to open that up. And so in our record card here, we've got the title, and then that button underneath it is basically how you're going to access the information. So this is by request only. So if I click on this, I wonder what you're going to see. You're not going to see it, but it's basically going to open a, it opened up an email, and basically in the subject line, it forces in the header or the title of the data, and it's going to send it to John Trapp of Red Lodge Fire. And so basically, this is one of the responses that you'll see, or the types of way you can access the information. So the metadata record has been made publicly available, but if you want the information, you're going to have to request it from the City of Red Lodge. This isn't always the case, but sometimes some smaller local governments don't have a way to directly serve out their information, so it's by request only. But I'm just going to hit back, go back one, and go to my greater list, and I want to click on the Montana Cadastral Framework. And in that, you're gonna see very similar way it's structured. The abstract is a little longer than the one that we looked at before, but you're still gonna see the usage information, how this should be used, who distributes it, how you can access the information. And then you can also look at that, those individual metadata records. So if we scroll back up to the top, you're going to also see the yellow star and the acronym MSDI. So that's indicating that this is an authoritative MSDI data set. So this is like the data that you can rely upon, and follows those standards set by national and state standards. And so it's a reliable data source. So here you can see that the data is available in a downloadable format. So if we click on the download the data, basically it takes us directly to how we serve it out as the Montana State Library. So there's different ways to pull down that information. We have available in different types of formats. If you're familiar with GIS formats, we've got it available in geodatabases and shapefiles. And this is the statewide layer. We also have them available in individual county layers as well. So, any questions about the data list?
I would say, participants, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourselves if you have a particular question, that's okay. We'll give them just a second.
Sure. Okay. If there aren't any, I'm just going to move forward, and then please feel free to go ahead and stop me if you have a specific question you'd like to see something demonstrated further. And then we have these data categories that you can see on the right-hand side. These are basically ISO, International Standards Organization data categories. And so every metadata record must be categorized following this methodology. So it's another quick way to just access a part of the metadata that has been, our metadata collection that has been categorized in that way. So if I click on Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure, it's basically going to show you all the information that follows the standards and best practices set forth through the MLIA. And so there's a lot of really great information in here. So I'll just kind of scroll through here, lots of different information. And so this is the data, like I said, you can rely upon, and I would highly recommend that if you are using statewide data sets, you always look to see if there's a Montana spatial data infrastructure layer there first. If not, there are other data sources that we can help put you in contact with, available with national, at the national level or through private entities. Okay, so I think the data list is pretty straightforward. You're gonna search, you know, basically on key text and then find that information through the returned records. And the next, I'm gonna move forward to the next way to discover information. It's called the data bundler. And so I'm gonna have to do a stop and start again. So I think that's the best way. So I'm just gonna stop sharing briefly. And then we share. Okay. Hope, can you see the data bundler?
I can.
Great, fantastic. So we also refer to this data bundler as our clip, zip, and ship tool. So it allows you to either choose an extent of your choice or possibly do a drawing of information to select out a certain study area. So I'm going to click on county because it's pretty straightforward. And this is, here is the data bundler, and hopefully that ported over. There are several different base maps that you can choose from if you want to explore information. But I'm going to go ahead and on the left, or excuse me, on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see how we're going to extract information here. So my geography is set to county, so I'm going to use Lewis and Clark County as my clip tool. So Lewis and Clark. So you can see that it's highlighted, and then you can choose your output coordinate system. So I'm going to use state plane. My output, I want to have an Esri shapefile, and then I'm going to put in my email address. There we go. Okay.
I'm going to ask the GIS neophyte questions. I don't know what the state plane means. I do know what a Esri shapefile is, but for people who might not know.
Okay, so thank you. That's a coordinate system. That's a defined coordinate system in the state. And so they only give, within this, within the drop down here, this coordinate system, it only gives you really just a few to choose from. And NAT83 hard and state plane meters, I do believe, is our current state standard. And really the information, the data, most of us are working in state planes. Some people work in UTM. And I would choose every time one of the NAT83 hard and state planes output coordinate system. You'll want to, if you're using GIS software, it's really great these days because what it does is reproject on the fly. So it's how that information is projected in your software. And in the past, there was a lot of kind of heavy lifting when you had to take and reproject information. But like I said, it does it on the fly, so it does it automatically. And but I would just go ahead and choose the NAT83 HARN Montana State Plane Meter, unless your organization is telling you to choose something else. So, and I do believe these are going to be updated soon with newer coordinate systems. So, okay, so I have my clip county set. So I want to choose Lewis and Clark County, and I've got my output coordinate system. I've got my output format. I've got my Esri shapefile. Let me choose Lewis and Clark County again because it disappeared. I don't know why it didn't. Okay, there we go. And then number two is I want to add or remove layers. What layers am I looking for? So There's a ton of different information that's out here and available. You're going to see those categories, those ISO standard categories that I mentioned earlier. So those are our basic categories of how we classify our spatial information. So let's say I want to find all the NHD flow lines for Lewis and Clark County. And then I also want major streams, and I want structures, and I also want incorporated city and town boundaries and railroads. Kind of random, but if you saw me clicking these over on the right, there's a corresponding line item that's coming up under set parameters. If you choose every single one of these by county, it's going to take a long time to process. And so, and don't choose it by state, because you just go ahead and download the statewide data layer. You don't need to clip it out by state. That could also cause some issues. I don't even know if you're able to. It might not let you do it, but you're going to want to define your study area. So right now, let's say I'm working in Lewis and Clark County, and I want the information for Lewis and Clark County, excuse me. So I'm just going to X out of the box here at the top, and then click on request data. And so then I received that notification below the request data button saying that the request was sent to the queue and will be processed in the order received. Process times vary based on the size and the complexity of the data request. So it really depends on how much information is being extracted. But what is happening behind the scenes is a new request is sent with your email information. So it's going to go in, it's going to use the system to clip all that statewide data based on Lewis and Clark County boundary. And then eventually it will send me an email. And so I'll have an email in my inbox with a temporary downloadable data link. So it's through an FTP site. So it will be out there, and I can't remember the exact number of days. It might be about 2 weeks. It might be less than that, but it'll be out there for a specific period of time for you to go ahead and download. If it expires, then we just ask you to run it again for your study area. And so let me reset this. Okay, I just hit the refresh button to kind of go back to the start of the data bundler. So I'm going to type in Helena, Montana here in the search box. So it's basically a basic text search for the state. So if you type in a city, it's going to allow you to navigate to that. And then on the right, you can, by getting to this page, I chose county boundaries. That's what I wanted to clip based on. But let's say I have a smaller study area and I'd like to draw that polygon myself. So I'm going to zoom in a little more. Let's say I'm doing a study of the fort. So I know that this is the fort out here, just because I'm from Helena and familiar with the area. So I'm going to choose user drawn polygon. Oh, it reset. Great. Zoom back into Helena. There we go. And then I'm going to click. So it gives you some basic instructions in here on how to draw your polygon. So you're going to click draw polygon, and then just sometimes we do get click happy in life. I know that I am definitely guilty of that. Just try to be patient with the system. So you're going to I say that. It's not working for me.
These are things that happen. Well, while you're fiddling with it there, we do have a question. Paul Acevedo asked, can you amend a data request?
No, you can't. Once it goes through, it goes through. So you would have to, honestly, I'd probably just like take notes or a screenshot to see exactly what types of data you've asked for. Because sometimes people do some very specific data requests. And if you're doing it constantly, it's another good thing to kind of keep written down or documented somewhere. But I do not know why this polygon is not working. Draw once. Click once to start drawing. So I'm just going to try it really quickly in another browser to see if it's a browser issue. I don't think it's a presenting issue because I've never had that happen before. Ah, so it is, I did not see this at the top. The draw polygon tool is currently broken, and I apologize for that, but eventually it will be fixed. It is a really nice tool to utilize when it works. And again, I apologize, a little embarrassed that I did not see that come up when I was practicing earlier.
It's okay. Forgiving crowd.
Yeah.
We're all doing the best we can every day right now.
Yeah, yeah. But there are different ways to go about selecting and clipping your geography based on types of geography. So we've got census designated place, county, incorporated cities and towns, the public land survey system, reservations, watershed subbasin, and statewide. And basically the reason why we've chosen these ones is it's basically data driven on requests that we've seen come out of data requests in the past before this tool was built. So these are kind of some of the more popular geographies that people would like to clip on. If you see something that you are using often or wish that was in there, please go ahead and shoot us an email, and we try to meet those requests. These are the most popular, and it really have to be something that a lot of people would want for us to consider it. But you know, unless we hear from you, we don't know if this is truly serving everyone to the best of their, I guess, agency's needs. So a census designated place, I just want to go over that really quick. So it's basically, it's a census geography that's basically defined by population. And these are the non-incorporated places of the state. And so you can see that the Helena Valley, I'm going to go back to Helena again, is one of these census designated places. So it's called the Helena Valley Northeast, and then we've got Central West. So there's lots of different types of geographies that are out there and available. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a background of what truly a census designated place is. And basically whenever you have any kind of census geography, it's going to have some sort of population and other important census information tied to it. So if you do it based on a defined census geography, you're going to get population. And I know that can be quite important when doing types of analysis. And then I think these are all pretty straightforward. I'll do section, township, and range as well. So let's just do a random one. Hopefully it'll work. 7, north, range 17. I was hoping it would zoom me to it. And I'm just gonna randomly choose things. And 93. In this one, I can define a buffer distance in miles. So I'm just going to choose a mile buffer and then do a shapefile. And again, put my email in there and click request data. Oops, something was not. Okay. Oh, forgot to fill out one. The range direction. Okay, so this went through, and then hopefully by the end of this presentation, I'll be able to show you some of the data that I've requested. So are there any other questions about the data bundler? So I'm going to move on to another tool. All right.
I'd say go ahead and move on, and I'll keep checking the chat for questions.
Okay. Can everyone see the cadastral application now?
I can.
Okay. So this is the Montana cadastral application, and we are currently working to rebuild it, and the beta is out there and available for test right now. I'm not sure if any of you have tried it. On the left-hand side, it says try cadastral beta, and that will take you to that, but I'm just going to show you the current production cadastral. environment. So again, this is the way to use use a tool to search for statewide public and private land ownership. So we have 100% coverage in the state of Montana. And just kind of as a, before we get started, if you ever want to go back to just the home, this button here at the top, it looks like an icon, a logo, the Montana Cadastral, that will reset the map every time. So if you've zoomed in somewhere and you just want to start your search over, if you click on that, that basically refreshes the application. Over on the right-hand side, we've got our basic tools, zoom in, zoom out, street, aerial, and topo. And so basically street, aerial, and topo are the different choices in base map when viewing the map. And then you've got the previous and next buttons, and then the print button. And the print button is not working currently the way we'd like it. And we are working on porting that over to the new beta program so we have better print functionality. Okay, so that's just the basics of how some of the basic tools for exploring the cadastral, so we can dive into some of these other tools. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to click search. And this is how you're going to search for a piece of a land based on whatever variable you would like that we have defined here. So we've got variable by owner, geocode, assessment, certificate of survey, by address, and then by subdivision. And one of the more popular searches is just by a person's name. And so basically I'm going to randomly choose, I always type on Smith, so I'm sorry if this is somebody that actually is in our class today. So basically you're gonna always wanna search on the last name. If you have more information, you can enter it into the search box. But what I did was I chose from the drop down of counties, and you have to choose a county, and then type in the name Smith, and this is my list that comes up here. So I really don't have anyone specifically that I'm looking for, so I am going to choose one. And what that does, you saw that the map just had an automated action. As soon as I click on that owner name, so that's Barry Smith from Lewistown, Montana, what it's going to do is two things. It's going to zoom the map to the defined parcel outline, so you can see that highlighted in blue on the right-hand side of the screen, and then also open up the property record card. And so the property record card is information that comes from the Department of Revenue. So this website is a partnership between local governments, the Montana State Library, and the Montana Department of Revenue. So we pull nightly this information that populates the property record information. And from the property record card, there's a couple different things you can do. You can choose the tax year. So currently in the 2019, it automatically puts it into 2019, and then you have the 2020 tax year and then the 2018 tax year. So that's if you're doing, you want to do some information recent tax years, that tool allows you to do that with the drop down there. So in the first part of the property record card, we have the summary information, and that gives a lot of just basic information about the owner and again, just general property information. And then below, you can see that there are additional variables and information if you can choose by clicking on the bar, and it will expose and roll up to expose more information. So this gives you more information about owners, and then appraisal information, market land info, and one of the ones we use quite a bit, we see people using often, is dwelling. So it actually gives you information about the buildings that are on the property. So you can see that the building was built in 1915, and the roof material is asbestos. And you can see that it has a full basement, we go down here a little further, this is where I'm reading this information from. It's got a concrete foundation. So there's a lot of really great information in here. And so I can't go through it all, but I would just recommend that you navigate to gis.mt.gov and get familiar with it and take a look at the information that you might be curious in exploring. And one thing that, you know, while you're at the scale, looking at one parcel, you might want to get a little more information and possibly see what's on the ground. And that would be your time to turn on your aerial imagery. And so there is no dwelling there. So this must be old imagery. And basically you'd want to use aerial. I mean, you could use it at the statewide level, but usually, you know, you're not going to see a lot of detailed information until you're zoomed to more of a community level extent. And then there's also the topographic base map. So I'll click on topographic base map, and these are 24K quads that have been sewn together and made available as a statewide layer. So this is probably going to take a minute to load. But as you probably noticed, if you didn't, the parcels are going to turn different colors when you turn on different base maps, so they're easily visible. And when you turn on aerial base map, the parcels are going to turn orange, and it's so they can be better viewed on a darker base map, and they're also orange on the topo base map as well. But then if I click street, it's going to turn back to gray. So you're going to lose a lot of the geographic data when you turn on aerial, because the point of using aerial is so you can actually see the aerial images. And then since I'm in the map, all I've done is zoomed out a couple times by scrolling in and out with my mouse. By moving the wheel forward and backward, you can scroll in and out. But you can see that on I have not clicked anywhere in the map. I'm just using the scroll wheel. You can see that the record card is still highlighted here, but I want to do some exploring to see who owns other property in the area. So by just taking the mouse and clicking on the property that I'm interested in, what it's going to do is, you saw that it highlighted it, and it's basically kind of panning the property to the central portion of the window there. And then it automatically brought up the property record card for that corresponding parcel. So you can see that this is owned by Amy Jane Mackenzie Sanders, and who lives in Billings. And so it's just a really great tool for researching property information.
Erin,
and so,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Stacy Barta is asking, what does it mean when it says the parcel for this owner cannot be mapped? She's in the cadastral system.
Several different things, and I'm going to look into that. I think it's because it might be, do you know what? It depends on the county.
Stacy, do you want to go ahead and chime in here? Unmute yourself.
Is it Yellowstone County?
It is Gallatin.
It's Gallatin. You know, sometimes that is it's a condo.
No, it's not a condo. It's
okay.
I clicked on a property that I knew of and or by the name anyway, and it doesn't even have the acres listed.
So sometimes it's also something described as a parcel is listed as something other than real property, so personal property, and that cannot be mapped. And so it really depends on each and everything. But I can respond to you offline if you'd like. It really depends on what the county is mapping. We do get that information. That actually information is being pulled from the Department of Revenue. So
it just struck me as odd. I'd never come across a parcel that had, other than owners,
yeah,
there's no information on it at all.
Yeah, it's in the system as personal property on the property record card.
Oh, yep, it is. It says personal property, strict personal.
Yeah, And I would probably rely on a Department of Revenue person to, and I could actually get a statement from them and send it to everyone on why it is entered into there. But that's what that is. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to need to wrap up.
Yeah, we are.
Do you have any major points you want to make just quickly?
Well, one major point, and I'm sorry, we could talk about this all day, is we do have access to the a Montana Enterprise License Agreement with Esri. And so whether you're a GIS user or not yet, every state employee has access to free training through Esri. So I'm just going to pull it up really quickly. And we wanted to show you our resources, but if you're not familiar with how to use the GIS data and you're interested in learning GIS, this is the way to get started. And you will need a login, and you will need to work with your agency's GIS person, defined GIS person. And I don't know the breakdown of all the agencies here, but I'm going to pull up our Enterprise License Agreement webpage. It's an internal webpage only to state government. And I'm going to click on our leads. And so here's our leads for all the agencies. Some of these have changed recently, but those are the people you want to reach out to if you're interested in using GIS more, because they're going to give you access to the software, and they're also going to give you access to the free training resources. So Esri is the software vendor that we use. You've probably seen a lot of the products that have come out of it lately, like the dashboards and the web maps, but we do have the Enterprise License Agreement in place, and it's free training for all state employees as long as it falls under what's considered free in the system. So I wanted to put that out there. It's a pretty great resource and a valuable advantage of our enterprise agreement.
Yeah, great. No, that's a great point to make. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I don't have any additional questions that have come through at this time, but if people have questions as they're working through, since you're super busy with the COVID-19 stuff, what's the best way for them to direct questions?
Yeah, the best way for people to contact anybody here in the state library would be to come to our webpage and possibly contact one of these leads directly. If you do have requests for specific information that fall under one of these MSDI layers, they can give you the nitty gritty or the details about each and every theme. I can give you very basic information about state GIS and coordination and how we're doing things, but the email address is geoinfo@mt.gov. So it's geoinfo@mt.gov, and that's where you'd send your general requests. But a lot of folks, it's defined on these data pages who you can reach out to discover information. So please, as busy as I am right now, please feel free to contact me with your requests, and I'll be able to forward it to the correct person.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll just add on. So on the MEPA training webpage that the participants have been referring to all day yesterday and now today, I've added some additional links under the April 3rd information. The link to this MEPA training page is in your Outlook meeting bug, and you can pull these up. So what I've added in is a list of online analysis resources that our office has provided for MEPA practitioners. You can find information about how to get to the data for air quality and wildlife and traffic, for birds, for cultural records. So you can use that as a resource as you're trying to navigate online and find data as well. I've also included links to each of the primary agencies' GIS web pages for FWP, DNRC, MDT, and DEQ, where they list their open source GIS data as well as the links that Erin has showed you. So just some different ways to navigate to different data there on the training website. I'm just going to check here. I don't see any additional questions. So thanks very much, Erin. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, and everybody stay healthy.
Yeah, you too.